Hey everyone, welcome back to Literate Lens. I'm so glad you're here today because we're about to dive into a book that honestly changed the way I think about work, focus, and honestly, my entire life. If you're new here, this channel is all about extracting the most powerful lessons from incredible books and delivering them to you in a way that actually sticks. So if you love learning and growing, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Today, we're talking about Deep Work by Cal Newport. And I have to tell you, this book hit me like a wake-up call. Let's get into it. So, imagine this. You're sitting at your desk, laptop open, ready to do something important. Maybe it's studying for an exam, working on a project, or creating something meaningful. You tell yourself, okay, I'm going to focus for the next 2 hours and get this done. But then, your phone buzzes. It's a notification. Just one quick look, right? Then you see an email pop up. Then you remember you need to check something on Instagram. Before you know it, an hour has passed, and you've barely made any progress on what you set out to do. Sound familiar? Yeah, me too. And here's the thing that Cal Newport realized, and it's kind of terrifying when you think about it. We're living in a world that's basically designed to destroy our ability to focus. Every app, every notification, every, hey, quick question message is pulling our attention in a million different directions. And we've normalized it. We think this is just how work is now. We think multitasking is a skill. We think being busy means being productive. But Newport says no. He says we've got it all wrong. And he introduces this concept that he calls deep work. Now, what is deep work? It's the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's when you're so locked in, so completely immersed in what you're doing, that time just flies by. You know those moments when you're working on something and you look up and suddenly 3 hours have passed and you're like, wait, what just happened? That's deep work. That's the zone. That's the state where real magic happens. And here's what Newport discovered that's so crucial. Deep work is becoming increasingly rare. At the exact same time, it's becoming increasingly valuable. Think about that for a second. The skill that creates the most value in our economy, the skill that separates the truly successful from everyone else, is the one skill that almost nobody is developing anymore. It's like we're all in a race where everyone is running in the wrong direction, and the few people who figure out the right direction are just sprinting past everyone else. Newport tells us about these incredibly successful people. He talks about Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, who built himself a stone tower in the woods with no electricity, no phone, just so he could think deeply. He talks about Bill Gates, who takes think weeks, where he goes to a cabin alone with nothing but books and papers just to think without interruption. He talks about J.K. Rowling, who checked herself into a hotel room to finish writing Harry Potter because she needed that deep, uninterrupted focus. And you might be thinking, well, sure, but those are famous geniuses. I'm just trying to get through my work and maybe learn some new skills. But that's exactly Newport's point. These people aren't successful because they were born geniuses who could then afford to do deep work. They became successful because they practiced deep work. The deep work came first. The success came after. Let me tell you something that really got to me. Newport talks about how the average knowledge worker, the average person working in an office or studying or trying to build something, checks their email every 6 minutes. 6 minutes! That means you're never focused for more than 6 minutes at a time. You're constantly switching between tasks, constantly reacting to notifications, constantly in what Newport calls shallow work mode. And shallow work, that's the opposite of deep work. It's those logistical tasks, the emails, the meetings that could have been emails, the Slack messages, the busy work that makes you feel productive but doesn't actually move the needle on anything important. And here's the scary part. Shallow work doesn't just take up time. It actually destroys your capacity to do deep work. Every time you switch tasks, every time you check your phone, there's what Newport calls attention residue that sticks with you. Part of your brain is still thinking about that email you just read, that message you just saw, and it takes a while, sometimes 20 minutes or more for your brain to fully focus on the new task. So when we're constantly switching, we're never actually fully focused on anything. We're working at like 50% capacity all the time, and then we wonder why we feel exhausted at the end of the day, even though we didn't really accomplish anything meaningful. Sound familiar? Now, Newport doesn't just tell us that deep work is important and then leave us hanging. He gives us practical rules, actual strategies to build this skill. And I love this about the book because it's not just theory, it's a blueprint. The first big idea is that you need to make deep work a priority, not something you'll do if you have time, but something you schedule and protect like it's the most important meeting of your day. Because it is. Newport talks about different strategies people use. Some people go full monk mode, like Neil Stephenson, the science fiction writer, who doesn't even have an email address. He just writes. That's it. Others do what he calls the bimodal approach, where they divide their time into deep periods and shallow periods. Maybe you do deep work for a few days straight, then handle all the shallow stuff in batches. Then there's the rhythmic approach, which is probably the most practical for most of us. This is where you build a daily habit of deep work. Same time, same place, every single day. Maybe it's 2 hours every morning before you check any messages. Maybe it's in the evening. The point is, it becomes a ritual, a non-negotiable part of your day. And here's something that really clicked for me. Newport says you need to embrace boredom. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. We've trained ourselves to reach for our phones the instant we feel even a tiny bit of boredom. Waiting in line, phone. Sitting on the toilet, phone. Walking between classes, phone. We've eliminated every moment of potential boredom from our lives. And Newport says this is destroying our ability to concentrate because concentration is actually a skill, like a muscle. And if you never practice being okay with boredom, you'll never be able to focus deeply. He talks about this concept of productive meditation. This is where you take a walk or go for a run or do something physical and you think deeply about a specific problem. No phone, no podcast, no music, just you and your thoughts. And at first, it's hard. Your mind wanders constantly, but over time, you get better at directing your attention, at staying focused on one problem. And this practice actually strengthens your ability to do deep work. Another huge part of the book is about what Newport calls draining the shallows. This is about ruthlessly cutting out or minimizing the shallow work in your life. And he's not saying you can eliminate it completely because, let's be real, we all have to respond to emails and do administrative stuff sometimes. But he is saying that most of us spend way more time on shallow work than we need to. He suggests this exercise. Look at every activity you do in a day and ask yourself, how long would it take to train a smart, recent college graduate with no specialized training to do this task? If the answer is not very long, that's shallow work, and the goal is to minimize that stuff as much as possible. Newport tells this story about a CEO who started scheduling every minute of his day, not because he's some control freak, but because he wanted to be intentional about where his time went. And when he did this, he realized he was spending like 60% of his time on stuff that didn't really matter, stuff that other people could do, stuff that was just filling time. So he started delegating, saying no, setting boundaries, and suddenly he had so much more time for the deep work that actually moved his company forward. And here's the thing about saying no. We're all terrified of it, especially when we're young and trying to build our careers or our businesses or whatever. We think we have to say yes to everything, that every opportunity matters. But Newport makes this point that really stuck with me. When you say yes to something, you're not just saying yes to that one thing. You're saying yes to all the time and attention and energy it's going to take. You're saying no to everything else you could be doing with that time. So the real question isn't, could this be beneficial? The question is this the most beneficial thing I could be doing with this time?
Now, this next part is where Newport gets a little controversial, and I know some of you might resist this, but I want you to really hear him out. He has a whole section about quitting social media, and before you click away, let me explain what he means. He's not saying social media is evil or that nobody should ever use it. What he's saying is that we need to be way more intentional about it. Most of us use social media because, well, everyone uses social media. We're bored, we scroll. We want a break, we scroll. We don't even think about it, it's just automatic. But Newport asks us to think about social media like a tool. And with any tool, you should use it only if the benefits clearly outweigh the costs for your specific goals. Not for society in general, not for your friends, but for you and what you're trying to accomplish. He talks about this any benefit mindset that we have, where we justify using a tool if we can think of any possible benefit. Like, well, social media helps me stay connected with old friends, or I might miss out on some opportunity if I'm not on there. But that's not how we should evaluate tools. Instead, Newport says to identify your major life goals and the key activities that support those goals, and then ask honestly whether social media significantly helps with those activities. For most people, when they really think about it, the answer is no. Or at least the benefits are way smaller than they thought, and the costs, the time, the attention, the constant distraction, are way bigger than they want to admit. And I get it. The fear of missing out is real. But Newport argues that the things you're afraid of missing out on probably aren't as important as you think, and the thing you're definitely missing out on by spending hours on social media every day is the deep, focused work that could actually change your life. There's this whole philosophy Newport introduces about how we should think about work, especially for those of us who are knowledge workers or students or entrepreneurs. He says we need to stop thinking of work as just being busy or putting in hours and start thinking of it as producing value. He talks about this concept called the craftsman mindset. This is where you focus on what you can offer the world, the value you can create, the skills you can develop, rather than obsessing over what the world can offer you. And when you adopt this mindset, deep work becomes essential, because that's where real skill development happens, where you actually get better at something meaningful. Newport shares this insight that really made me rethink everything. He says that the most successful people aren't working more hours than everyone else. In fact, they're often working fewer hours, but they're producing way more value because they've mastered the ability to focus intensely on the right things. They're not spending 8 hours doing shallow work, they're spending 3 or 4 hours doing deep work that actually matters. And that deep work produces more value than most people produce in a full day of distracted effort. And here's something that might surprise you. Newport actually advocates for having a hard cutoff time for work. Like, you decide, I'm done working at 5:30 p.m., and then you're actually done. No emails, no just one more thing, nothing. And this seems crazy at first, because we're taught that success requires grinding all the time, working nights and weekends, being always available. But Newport argues that having that hard stop actually makes you more productive because it forces you to be ruthless about how you spend your time during the day. If you know you only have until 5:30, you can't waste time on shallow work. You have to prioritize, you have to focus. And having that complete separation also allows your mind to rest and recharge, which is actually crucial for doing deep work. Now, here's where the book gets really interesting and honestly kind of profound. Newport doesn't just argue that deep work makes you more productive or successful, though it definitely does. He argues that deep work makes you happier, that it creates meaning in your life.
He talks about this research showing that people are happiest when they're in a state of flow, completely absorbed in a challenging task. Not when they're relaxing, not when they're on vacation, but when they're working on something difficult that requires their full attention. And that makes sense when you think about it, right? Some of the most satisfying moments in your life probably weren't when you were scrolling through social media or watching TV. They were when you created something, learned something difficult, accomplished something that required real effort. And Newport brings up this philosopher named Hubert Dreyfus, who talks about the all-consuming craft and how the happiest people are often craftsmen, whether they're literal craftsmen building furniture or knowledge workers crafting ideas. They're people who have devoted themselves to getting really good at something, to producing quality work, and there's a deep satisfaction in that. And this really hit me because I think a lot of us, especially young people, we're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. We're looking for it in entertainment, in social media likes, in shallow pleasures that feel good for a minute but leave us feeling empty. But real fulfillment, real meaning comes from the deep work. It comes from building something, creating something, mastering something. It comes from knowing that you're capable of doing difficult things, of focusing when focus is hard, of producing work that matters. So here's what all of this means practically. Newport lays out this challenge, and I want to challenge you with it right now. Start small. Don't try to do 4 hours of deep work tomorrow if you've never done it before. Your attention muscle isn't ready for that. Instead, start with 90 minutes. Block off 90 minutes where you're going to do nothing
but focus on one important task. No phone, no email, no social media, nothing, just you and the work. And it's going to be hard at first. You're going to feel the urge to check your phone. Your mind is going to wander. You might even feel anxious. That's normal. That's your brain that's been trained to expect constant stimulation and distraction. But push through it. Do it every day for a week and see what happens. I bet you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. And once you build that habit, once you start experiencing what it feels like to do real, deep, focused work, you're going to want more of it. You're going to start protecting that time fiercely because you'll realize it's when you do your best work, when you feel most alive, and when you actually move forward on the things that matter to you. Newport also suggests doing what he calls a shutdown ritual at the end of your workday. This is where you review your task list, make a plan for tomorrow, and then you literally say, shutdown complete. It sounds cheesy, but the point is to give yourself permission to fully disconnect, to know that you've handled everything that needs handling, and now you can rest without that nagging feeling that you're forgetting something. You know what I love most about this book? It's not just about productivity hacks or time management tips. It's about something deeper. It's about reclaiming your attention, your focus, your ability to think deeply and create meaningfully in a world that's constantly trying to fragment your mind into a million pieces. Newport makes this point that really stuck with me. He says that attention is your most valuable resource. Not time, not money, but attention. Because you can have all the time in the world, but if you can't focus that time on something meaningful, it doesn't matter. And every company, every app, every notification is competing for your attention, because that's where the real value is. So when you choose to do deep work, when you protect your focus, you're not just being productive. You're actually rebelling against the culture that wants to turn you into a distracted consumer who's constantly reacting, constantly scrolling, constantly busy, but never truly focused. You're saying, no, my attention is valuable. My ability to think deeply is valuable, and I'm going to invest it in things that actually matter to me.
And here's the beautiful part. The more you practice deep work, the better you get at it. And the better you get at it, the more you realize how much time you were wasting before. You start to see through all the pseudo-productivity, all the busy work, all the distractions that seemed so important. And you start to focus on what really matters, what really creates value, what really makes you feel fulfilled. Newport shares these stories of people who transform their careers and their lives by embracing deep work. Academics who went from struggling to publish to becoming leading voices in their fields. Entrepreneurs who went from barely getting by to building successful companies. Students who went from average to exceptional. And the common thread is that they all learned to do something that's increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. They learned to focus. So here's my challenge to you. And really, it's Cal Newport's challenge to all of us. Start today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Block off some time for deep work. Turn off your phone. Close your email. Choose one important task and give it your complete attention. And see how it feels. See what you can accomplish. See what changes when you stop being a slave to distraction and start being the master of your attention. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear, but we all need to understand. The world isn't going to give you permission to do deep work. Your boss isn't going to say, hey, turn off your email for 3 hours and focus. Your friends aren't going to stop texting you. Social media isn't going to become less distracting. The world is going to keep pulling at your attention from every direction. So you have to decide. You have to choose to protect your focus, to value your attention, to do the deep work that creates real value and real meaning in your life. And yeah, it's hard. It requires discipline. It requires saying no to a lot of things. It requires going against the grain of how everyone else is working. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. That's exactly why the people who master deep work stand out. That's exactly why this skill is becoming more valuable every single day. Look, I know this was a long summary, but this book is just packed with insights that can genuinely change your life if you take them seriously. If you got value from this video, if something I said resonated with you, do me a huge favor and subscribe to Literate Lens right now. We're building a community of people who are serious about learning, growing, and becoming the best versions of themselves. Every week, I break down powerful books like this one and extract the lessons that can actually transform your life. And hey, let me know in the comments what your biggest takeaway was from this summary. Are you going to try deep work? What's one thing you're going to change after hearing this? I read every comment, and I'd love to hear from you. Remember, the ability to focus deeply is becoming rare, which means it's becoming incredibly valuable. So go out there, protect your attention, do the deep work, and watch what happens. Trust me, your future self will thank you. Thanks so much for watching Literate Lens. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep doing the deep work.